democracy here, but it has to, or we have to have a different kind of a system because it reflects our culture. But the reality is democracy exists in Taiwan, and it's working very well, and is a strong example in terms of what can work there. So I think I've got a few minutes to continue.
We've got that. Yes, the honourable member will have 2 more minutes once we resume from question period. Statement by members, déclaration des députés, l'honorable.
The honourable member for Montcalm. Mr. Speaker, I will read a motion that was adopted unanimously at the National Assembly this morning. The National Assembly denounces the federal government's desire to allow the construction of an airport in Mascouche despite the Environmental Quality Act. It calls upon the government of Quebec to intervene to prevent the construction of the airport. Everything that has to do with Ottawa concerning Quebec ends up going against Quebec's interests. As soon as they put their nose into our business, the National Assembly has to issue a unanimous declaration to denounce that. Sometimes they even have to go before the courts. Everyone pays the price. Our sick people, our workers, our forestry workers, our agricultural workers. And now the entire population of Mascouche will pay the price. I see Liberals across the way who are laughing, but they can't even accept this. The message is clear. Stop piling all of this on our heads. I hope the Minister of Transport has heard this message loud and clear.
For Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, today I'm adding my voice to that of my colleague from the Yukon to speak about the need to protect the Porcupine Caribou Calving Grounds located in the National Wildlife Refuge. In fact, I ask all of us in this House to speak together to protect these grounds as the risk to this area being opened up for drilling increases. The Arctic National Wildlife Refuge is one of the most fragile ecosystems in the world and is already under assault from climate change. The Gwich'in people have traditionally relied on the porcupine caribou herd as a main source of food, for tools, clothing, and trade. Caribou is not hunted for sport or entertainment. Today it still fills the freezers for our elders and the stomachs of many families. We must work together to sustain present and future generations of this herd. I encourage all MPs and Canadians to help seek permanent protection for the Porcupine Caribou Calving Grounds in Alaska. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Central Okanagan-Smilkameen.
Mr. Speaker, the Liberals are right when they say many Canadians want to talk about democratic reform. In fact, I've heard from many citizens in Central Okanagan-Smilkameen-Nicola this week about this very topic. They are, to put it candidly, outraged and insulted. Insulted by the absurd online electoral survey push poll, and outraged there is no opportunity to provide input on either proportional representation or a democratic referendum. In fact, a constituent of mine who tried to phone in was told they were not even ready to take his phone call. Mr. Speaker, we may never forget that democracy in this great country belongs to the people and not to any political party. I implore this Liberal government to stop treating democratic reform like a circus sideshow and give Canadians the voice they deserve with a true democratic referendum guided by a proper process. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for York South Weston.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker.
Today to speak to a great institution in my riding of York South Weston. Founded in 1904, West Park Healthcare Centre has been vital not only to my riding but across the province of Ontario. West Park
offers specialized rehabilitation services, including complex care, long-term care, and community health services that help people manage difficult health problems, such as lung disease, diabetes, stroke, amputation, and musculoskeletal problems resulting from illness or trauma.
Announced that West Park Healthcare Centre is expanding with the addition of a new hospital building. This new facility will be 720,000 square feet and will provide inpatient and outpatient services. I congratulate the staff, the management team and volunteers for continuing to make this centre successful in my riding. Through this expansion, Honourable Speaker, the Westlake Healthcare Centre will continue to remain and be an integral part of my riding for decades to come. Thank you.
The honourable member for Hamilton Mountain.
Mr. Speaker, over the past year I've stood in this House many times asking this government when will it stop hiding behind the CCAA process and actually help the over 20,000 Stelco workers and pensioners in Hamilton. And in that time we have heard nothing from the Liberal government or from the minister. Negotiations are now taking place to lift the company out of bankruptcy protection. Having the federal government at the table to make a modest investment would help enormously. Such an investment could help ensure that the workers and pensioners don't get shafted in the process. But guess what, Mr. Speaker? Total silence again and no commitment of any kind. This last Monday, I met with the steelworker leadership representing these workers and pensioners. They expressed profound disappointment at the Liberals' failure to live up to the promises made during the election. This government needs to wake up and show the leadership that the workers in our steel industry expect and deserve. Why has the Liberal government chosen to abandon Hamilton steelworkers and pensioners? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Surrey Centre.
350 years ago, a Saint soldier, Guru Gobind Singh, was born. A master of verse, archery, and diplomacy, he stood up against any who threatened the rights of others. However, his determination and steadfast courage to ensure that everyone should be allowed to practice their faith freely became his mission. He decided that he will create a nation of free spirits with no race, creed, or caste, that would never bow their heads to fear or oppression, but instead live as sovereigns of freedom. In doing so, he lost his father, his mother, and 4 young sons, but never shed a tear as he knew generations were yet to come. He fought 11 battles, yet never won for territory. For this, he created the Khalsa, an order of women and men who as equals would stand in a crowd as beacons of hope and freedom. Today, almost 600,000 of his people call this country home, 17 of which sit in this house. To them we say, Happy Gurpurb.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, foreign interference in Canadian elections through unrestricted funding to third parties is not a hypothetical. It happened in the 2015 election, in which substantial amounts of U.S. dollars flowed to Canadian third parties. Recently, in shocking testimony before the Senate Legal Affairs Committee, the Chief Electoral Officer said that there is nothing to prevent foreign funding to third parties during elections, even though the Canada Elections Act expressly prohibits foreign interference during elections. Mr. Speaker, foreign interference during Canadian elections has to stop, and this government has a duty to make it stop. It's time for this government to take action to stop foreign interference in Canadian elections.
L'honorable député.
The honourable member for La Prairie. Mr. Speaker, as Canadians prepare to see their families and friends to celebrate the holidays and the new year, I'd like to acknowledge the important contribution of family farms and the agriculture sector as a whole, which allow us to put healthy, high-quality food on our tables. Many of these families will be working through the holiday period. They work tirelessly every day to meet your very highest expectations, as I'm sure you will see. By supporting agricultural workers and artisans in your region, you will discover distinctive new food products, and you'll be helping Canada's economy grow and flourish. So, Mr. Speaker, I invite all members of this House to take a moment to appreciate these families who give the food, who help produce the food that we share with our loved ones. Happy holidays. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Longueuil, Charles-le-Moine.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, as the member for Longueuil, Charles-le-Moine, I rise today to raise awareness in my riding about the 15th annual Christmas fundraiser known as the Grande Guignolée des Médias de la Rive-Sud. As the holiday season approaches, I invite everyone to be generous with our most vulnerable. Mr. Speaker, $3.7 million have been distributed to organizations that help the vulnerable over a period of 14 years. I'd like to thank the volunteers, the municipalities of the region of Longueuil, the corporate sponsors, the local and regional media, the Board of Administrators for La Grande Guignolée des Médias, and its president, Mr. Jean-Marie Girard. Thank you.
Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, December 10th will mark 68 years since the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. This is the benchmark for the fundamental human rights that all people, no matter their race, religion, ethnicity, sex, or status, are entitled to. The Universal Declaration was created to help heal divides left by the Second World War, but it's just as important today. World events of 2016 have been poignant reminders of how fleeting and fragile human rights are for billions worldwide. Every day, freedom of religion is threatened, movement is restricted, free speech is stifled, and conflict creates additional turmoil for so many. Human Rights Day is an annual reminder that this terrible reality exists. This year's focus encourages Canadians to stand up for victims of abuse in an increasingly interconnected world. Countries like Canada have a responsibility to renew our commitment to protect those very basic rights, rights that vulnerable people often cannot address themselves. I invite Canadians to reflect on what they can do to raise awareness and how they can participate in protecting and improving human rights. Mr. Speaker, compassion never goes unnoticed or unrewarded.
The Honourable Member for Ville-Marie, le Sud-Ouest, Île des Sœurs.
68th anniversary of the adoption of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by drafted by John Peters Humphrey, an academic, human rights defender, and McGill graduate, of course. The Declaration was the forerunner for countless human rights charters, including our own. It affirms the fundamental right of every individual to freedom and dignity and aims to transform states sweltering in the heat of oppression into oases of freedom and justice. La Journée Internationale.
International Human Rights Day is an opportunity not only to celebrate the progress that we've made, but also to reflect on all that remains to be done. Today, more than ever, we need to stand together against extremism, intolerance like Islamophobia, and violence. This Saturday and every day after that, I invite all of my colleagues in this House and all Canadians to take up Mr. Humphrey's fight and to defend human rights around the world.
Member for Brampton West.
Mr. Speaker, I'm proud to rise and acknowledge the work our government has done to reunite families. Over the last year, I've heard many heartbreaking stories from residents of Brampton West that have been separated from their partners for extended periods due to long application processing times and confusing requirements. Yesterday, I joined the Minister of Immigration, Citizenship and Refugees in Brampton West as he announced that the processing times for spousal sponsorship applications will be reduced to 12 months from 26 months. Our government has simplified and streamlined the application process, resulting in faster and more efficient system. The results speak for themselves, Mr. Speaker. We have a government that listens and acts. I look forward to seeing the residents in my riding and across Canada reunited with their spouses, starting their families, and giving back to our society. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer-Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, there are reports of people smelling burnt toast on the Liberal front bench. Late last week, the Minister of Democratic Institutions was forced to stand in this House and apologize for what she termed as an outburst. Well, Mr. Speaker, insulting members of Parliament isn't an outburst, it's outrageous. Recently, at a Senate committee, the Minister of Finance apologized to the senators for not being prepared to answer their questions. The Health and Justice ministers were made to pay back expenses they had wrongfully charged to Canadian taxpayers. The Ottawa minister completely bungled the selection of a new hospital site. And earlier this week, in order to avoid a walkout, the Prime Minister made his Natural Resources Minister call and apologize to First Nations chiefs. This all begs the question, Mr. Speaker, does the Prime Minister still have confidence in his cabinet, and might the new year bring a new front bench?
The Honourable Member for Scarborough Rouge Park.
Mr. Speaker, December 10th is Human Rights Day. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights defines our individual and collective rights. Brave women and men defend these rights in Canada and around the world each and every day. To mark this, we are proud to host the Scholars at Risk Network. The 450 academic institutions around the world, including 15 Canadian universities, protect scholars whose life is at risk by giving them safety, security, and a reprieve from imminent danger. This ensures that human rights are protected, academic freedom is secured, and the right to free expression is sanctified. Today, we have 5 scholars joining us, along with their respective academic institutions. From Syria, Dr. Rana Mustafa, Dr. Neil Yazri, Dr. Hanadi Ibrahim, of course, Dr. Asma Abu Mamar from Palestine, and Dr. Homa Hudfar, a Canadian academic held in Iran. We thank them for their bravery and enduring defense of human rights.
The honourable member for Victoria.
Mr. Speaker, here on the Hill today, an organization called Scholars at Risk is meeting to discuss the importance of protecting academics from around the world who are suffering grave threats to their lives, their liberty, and their very well-being, merely because of the research they do. This organization works to promote and protect global academic freedom by arranging temporary research and teaching positions at Canadian universities that value the rights of these scholars to be freely engaging in their work. Mr. Speaker, with this coming Saturday, December 10th, marking Human Rights Day, I find it particularly timely, highlighting the meaningful steps that this organization has taken to ensure that more than 700 scholars have found sanctuary since its inception in 2000, and that hundreds more have benefited from its referral services. This morning, I was pleased to join my parliamentary colleagues in meeting with this dedicated group. We will work together with the common goal of protecting and advancing academic freedom around the world.
The honourable member for Haldeman Norfolk.
Mr. Speaker, today at Beechwood National Cemetery, Canadian Air Force pilot Captain Thomas McQueen is being laid to rest. When he was 8 years old, Thomas dreamt of being a fighter pilot. He designed paper airplanes, he went to Army Air Cadet Camp, and he got top marks in school to get into training. An Afghanistan veteran, he even got to fly escort duty for Santa Claus. Thomas loved the outdoors. He loved speed, whether it was on land, on water, or in the air. And he was a notable handyman. When he decided that the prices were too high in the furniture stores, he built his own furniture. And he loved to make people laugh. But his real love was Caitlin. They were to be married just after Christmas. Mr. Speaker, we thank Thomas for his service to our country. We extend our condolences to Caitlin, to his parents, Tom and Edith, to his family and friends. And Mr. Speaker, a good man, a proud Christian, is now flying with the angels.
The honourable member for Hull-Aylmer.
And symbols matter. I was 4 years old when I heard the N-word for the first time. I didn't know what it meant, but the word stung. Imagine
Imagine how Viola Desmond felt when she was told to leave her seat in the cinema.
the hurtfulness of that moment, the sting of being dragged out, arrested, and charged, the humiliation of losing her case in the courts. Her courageous act of standing up for her rights eventually led to a more just society. Pour la première fois,
For the first time, a Canadian woman's face will at long last grace a Canadian banknote. I congratulate the Minister of Finance for making Viola Desmond's struggle for dignity Canada's story.
Afro-Canadian heritage are proud of what we're accomplishing. We, like all women, like Viola Desmond, strive to be fully equal. No more, no less. Words and symbols do matter. Thank you, Mr. President.
Oral questions, questions orales. The honourable leader of the opposition.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to welcome the outgoing Vice President to Canada today. We appreciate the good work that we all did together over the last decade. But there are new challenges on the horizon with the United States, work that we fear this Prime Minister isn't ready for. While the new U.S. President-elect starts slashing taxes and looking out for American jobs first, this Prime Minister is doing photo ops and fundraisers. Meanwhile, there hasn't been a single additional full-time job created in this country in a year. What's the Prime Minister's plan to compete and get Canadians back to work?
Right honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we presented our plan to grow the economy for the middle class last year during an election campaign, and Canadians overwhelmingly supported it. And since then, we've been making record investments in infrastructure to put Canadians to work and to create opportunities for them to get to and from work with public transit. We've put more money in the pockets of the middle class by raising taxes on the wealthiest 1% so we could lower them for middle-class Canadians, and we're delivering a more generous Canada Child benefit to the families that really need it by stopping to send them to millionaire families. These are some of the many, many things we're doing to help Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Well, Mr. Speaker, here's why it's so important for the Prime Minister to start getting serious. In the U.S., the new administration is getting ready to slash taxes for businesses and families. They already have advantages over Canada in energy costs. Canada's competitiveness is at risk, and jobs are going to go south even faster. That's unless the Prime Minister can get down to work. Will he come back next year with a real low-tax plan to keep jobs in Canada?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the member opposite speaks about getting energy to markets. That's exactly what we've done by approving the Kinder Morgan TMX pipeline. That's going to allow us to diversify our energy markets and allow Albertan producers to finally get global prices for their natural resource. On top of that, we continue to put forward growth and plans for investments that are going to help Canadians flourish right across the country. We understand that building a strong economy and a strong environment go hand in hand, which the other party previously in government did not.
Right. Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, high taxes are not creating jobs, and with Trump's election, it's about to get worse. Chez nos voisins du Sud.
With our neighbors to the south, the President-elect has an aggressive protectionist and trade policy to keep jobs in the U.S. and thus imperil Canadian jobs. Aggravating the situation, the Prime Minister proposed that NAFTA be renegotiated before he was even asked to do so. Does the Prime Minister recognize that was irresponsible? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the members of the opposition party spent the whole year criticizing the fact that we talk about global investment here in Canada. I went to Davos. I went to Sun Valley. We welcomed investors from all over the world to invest in Canada. There was the GE decision, the GM decision, the Amazon decision, the decisions of many companies like Thomson Reuters to create high-quality jobs here in Canada. So we know we're on the right track. We know what it is to be open to the planet and create jobs here. That's what we're delivering. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
In Canada. Yesterday, Mr. Speaker, we asked about cash for access, and the Prime Minister said there are a lot of questions about these issues, and he needs to answer them. The Liberal Party is promoting these events as a chance to discuss business and lobby the government. The hosts of these fundraisers know it, the guests know it, the Prime Minister knows it, but he also knows that this is wrong. When will the Prime Minister finally admit that selling access to raise money for the Liberal Party is unethical, and when will he commit to stopping it?
Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, despite what the members opposite say, Canadians can be reassured that we have some of the strongest rules in the country on political financing and fundraising. Those rules allow for openness, transparency, accountability that will reassure Canadians that everything is being done properly and in the rules. That's exactly what the Liberal Party has always done. We follow all the rules and the values that underpin them. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, it's highly disappointing, and it's actually disturbing to see the Prime Minister continue to blindly defend his actions of selling access to himself and the rest of the government. And the Liberals aren't even denying it anymore. They're explicitly linking government business with fundraising and raking in hundreds of thousands of dollars. Not only is the Prime Minister breaking his own ethical rules, he appears to be breaking the conflict of interest laws. Does he understand these facts and just doesn't care, or is the money too good to say no to?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Indeed, Mr. Speaker, despite the rhetoric and the contentions of the members opposite, Canadians can be comfortable in knowing that at the federal level we have some of the strongest rules around fundraising and political financing across the country. And Canadians can be reassured that we have always followed all the rules, and we always will, as well as upholding the principles and the values under which Canadians have confidence in their government. Principles like accountability, transparency, and openness.
The honourable member for Outremont. The Fisheries Minister stated that no government business was discussed during these exclusive fundraising dinners, but that has proven to be false. Allow me to read you a quote. There are questions about the inconsistencies in his own stories, his own contradictory statements. There are inconsistencies in what ministers of the Crown have been told to say to Parliament. Who said that? Well, it was the Prime Minister himself regarding the Senate scandal about Conservatives. How can the Prime Minister defend that he's become what he used to criticize? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, despite what the opposition is saying, Canadians should know that we have the strictest rules in the country about political financing at the federal level. Canadians can be confident in the accountability, openness and transparency of our election financing system, and I can reassure Canadians that the Liberal Party has always followed all the rules, values and principles underpin these rules.
The Prime Minister himself says he wrote rules banning cash for access events. Quote, there should be no preferential access to government accorded to individuals because they have made financial contributions to political parties. I couldn't agree more with the words of the Prime Minister on that one. Access to ministers and the Prime Minister should not be based on donations to a political party. Why? Because it's unethical. So my question for the Prime Minister, where was he last night?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we all agree that the rules governing political financing are extremely important and need to be followed. That's why we always follow them. The principles of openness, transparency, accountability are necessary for public trust in our institutions. And that's why we're proud that we have among the strongest rules in the country for political fundraising, and we always follow them.
Member for Outremont.
At another cash for access event. Now, on democratic reform, I know the Prime Minister got a bit confused by my question yesterday, but I do acknowledge that he again recommitted to changing the voting system before the next election. We also know that in the past, the Prime Minister has expressed his personal support for a system that greatly benefits the Liberals. My question for the Prime Minister, he wouldn't unilaterally bring in a system that only helps the Liberals, would he?
Honourable Prime Minister.
The fact is, Mr. Speaker, there are many, many different perspectives across this country on electoral reform, and that's why I'm so proud of the work that our minister and indeed the Electoral Reform Committee, comprised of people from all parties, has done on this issue. We're also very pleased to be engaging directly with Canadians through mydemocracy.ca, where I encourage Canadians to visit and fill out their perspectives and share their thoughts on how we can improve our democracy and our electoral system. Mydemocracy.ca, Mr. Speaker, I highly recommend it.
The honourable member for Outremont.
Our democracy, Mr. Speaker. Le projet de loi libéral.
The Liberal Bill C-29 does two things. It attacks Quebec jurisdiction and eliminates consumer protection regard to the banks. Stephen Harper tried to do the same thing when he was in power, but the court stopped him. Why is the Prime Minister seeking to protect banks rather than the most vulnerable among us? Will he withdraw these odious provisions that attack Quebec consumers? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Honourable Member for Outremont knows full well that we're working very hard to protect the vulnerable. That's why we reduce taxes for the middle class and increase them for the 1%. We have the child tax benefit. We'll lift hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty. Unfortunately, the members opposite voted against that measure. to increase taxes for the richest. We work to help our youth, seniors, the most vulnerable across the country, and we'll continue to do so.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister just doesn't get it. His hubris is astounding. He has hosted at least 17 elite cash for access events. His cabinet has hosted over 80 shady events this year alone. They claim to be consultations, but they come with a $1,500 entry fee. They are exclusive, whether they're in Bay Street law firms or in the homes of millionaires. The Prime Minister is selling access to his government. He knows it, and he knows it's wrong. So when will he show some leadership and end these unethical cash for access events?
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I always appreciate the opportunity to rise in this House and to be able to assure Canadians that when it comes to political financing, that we have some of the most strict rules across the country. Even the Chief Electoral Officer stated that Canada's political financing laws are the most advanced, constrained, and transparent in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Red Deer Lacombe.
Mr. Speaker, I actually feel bad for the members across the way. The ones not in cabinet, and the ones who actually believed this Liberal government would be different from the corrupt Liberals of the past. They believed, I'm sure, the Prime Minister when he published his open and accountable government rules. They probably thought he was going to live up to those standards, and I'm sure they're very, very disappointed. The Prime Minister makes the House Leader stand every day and repeat these pathetic talking points. It's insulting to her, and it's insulting to every member of this House. Here. Everyone except the Prime Minister can see he is selling access, so when will he wake up and put an end to these events?
Here. Honourable Government House Leader, order.
Mr. Speaker, once again, I am proud to be representing the good people of the riding of Waterloo and to do the good work that this government is doing for Canadians. What's insulting is that we can't work better together to respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. When it comes to political financing, we have some of the most strict rules across this country, and this government, this party, will continue to follow the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Beauport, Côte-de-Beaupré, d'Orléans, Charlevoix. Mr. Speaker, the Liberal government has prefabricated answers and given the numerous questions about its ethics. Many organizations have even sounded the alarm regarding its credibility around fundraising activities. The more they refuse to honestly answer our questions, the more they prove they're dishonest. Are the ministers waiting for us to demand a commission of inquiry, or will they stop this and follow the Prime Minister's ethics rules? Mr. Speaker, as I said many times in this House, the rules about fundraising at the federal level are the strictest in the country, and we follow them all. The Chief Electoral Officer also said that Canadian political financing laws are the most advanced, transparent, and strict in the world. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Sarnia Lambton.
Mr. Speaker, serious ethical questions are being asked about the Prime Minister and his cabinet ministers and their cash for access fundraisers. But all we get day after day are irrelevant talking points about Elections Canada finance rules. There is government business being discussed at Liberal fundraisers, and people who pay $1,500 are getting whatever they want, a new bank, an appointment, whatever. Mr. Speaker, when will the Prime Minister stop breaking his own ethics rules and finally put an end to his unethical shakedowns?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I once again appreciate the opportunity to rise in this House and to remind Canadians and to assure Canadians that when it comes to political financing, we have some of the most strict rules across this country, and I can assure Canadians that we will continue to follow the rules. And what I also know that Canadians appreciate is this government has taken unprecedented levels of consultations so that we can respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Member for Barrie Innisfil.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister has stated that Canadians have a lot of questions regarding the Liberals' cash for access fundraising scheme. No kidding. And yet, for all the assurances he tries to give, nobody is buying it. The Prime Minister set some pretty high expectations, and he's now demonstrating that punching above his weight was a one-time only event. Canadians should be asking, when will the for sale sign be going up in front of the Prime Minister's office if it hasn't already? Mr. Speaker, when will he come clean and admit he made a promise on ethics he had no intention of keeping?
Honourable Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, I encourage encourage the member to listen and to understand that when it comes to political financing, we have some of the most strict rules across this country, and we will continue to follow the rules. Even the Chief Electoral Officer has stated that when it comes to Canadian financement, the rules are some of the most strict, advanced, and transparent in the world. We will continue to respond to the very real challenges that Canadians are facing, and we will continue to do the good work that they expect us to do. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
For Barrie Innisfil.
In Ontario, we've seen the Liberal Cash for Access scheme go full throttle for well over a decade with the Prime Minister's friends at the controls, and it's traveling at hyperspeed since the operation moved from Queen's Park to the PMO. Everyone knows it's wrong. The Prime Minister's province of a higher standard of transparency was only a mirage. Repeating the strictest rules in the country line is nothing more than a cheap Jedi mind trick. These are not the fundraisers you're looking for. Canadians were offered a new hope. But isn't this Cash for Access scheme more like the dark?
The Honourable Government House Leader. Government House Leader.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians wanted a government that works for them. Canadians wanted a government that responds to the very real challenges that they are facing. That's exactly what this government is doing. This government recognizes that when you follow the rules, no conflicts of interest can exist, and that's why this government always follows the rules. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You want to be quiet. Breaking a bit Jedi mind tricks. The Honourable Member for Skinner-Bulkley Valley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Well, today we launched a rescue mission to save that fun little Liberal quiz, mydemocracy.ca, because Houston, the Liberals have a credibility problem. Instead of having a survey of confusing and ridiculous questions, we're suggesting adding clear and relevant questions. Here's one. Should the number of seats a party hold reflect the number of votes it actually received from Canadians? Our questions were drafted by experts and unanimously approved by the all-party committee, including our Liberal friends across the way. So will the government come back from outer space and support our proposal and reboot their discredit?
The Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member opposite for another opportunity to invite all Canadians to go online or pick up the telephone and take part in mydemocracy.ca. We want to hear from as many Canadians as possible about their values on electoral reform. We're proud, Mr. Speaker, that tens of thousands of Canadians have already taken part. We are proud, Mr. Speaker, of the Canadian political scientists who have helped us draft these questions, and we look forward to hearing from as many Canadians as possible before introducing legislation in this House.
The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. The mydemocracy.ca survey is about as scientific as something out of Harry Potter. Are you going to be an innovator, a challenger, or pragmatic? Personally, I would have liked to have been Gryffindor, and the minister is certainly Serpentor. This morning, we propose that the government correct the situation by including the committee's questions in its electronic consultation. These questions are neither partisan nor biased. Will the minister take electoral reform seriously and include the questions by our committee? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the Honourable Member for his interest in Harry Potter, and I want to thank him for his interest in mydemocracy.ca. Mr. Speaker, over 22,000 Canadians participated in the survey that the committee put forward. We thank them for their participation. Now, we'd like to hear from as many Canadians as possible in an accessible and inclusive way about their values on electoral reform before we move forward on this initiative, Mr. Speaker. Tens of thousands of Canadians are responding. We are proud of this initiative, and we look forward to hearing from many more voices before introducing legislation.
Member for Lanark, Frontenac, Kingston.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Based on his response to an earlier question, it sounds like the Prime Minister's choice of mydemocracy.ca was a Freudian slip. Right. Mr. Speaker, the CEO of Vox Pop Labs says that many responses to the My Democracy survey will be rejected. Not only responses unaccompanied by personal information, but also any that do not meet the test of what he calls, quote, a series of screening measures to ensure that the data set is consistent with unique respondents, end quote. To be clear, the screening test is proprietary and therefore opaque. So, when the final survey results are released, will the minister let Canadians know how many responses were excluded from the results and for what reason?
The Minister of Democratic Institutions.
I thank the honourable member for the opportunity to respond. I can assure all Canadians that we are open to hearing from as many voices as possible before introducing legislation. I can assure all Canadians that providing personal information is completely optional, and I can assure all Canadians that we will incorporate all feedback, whether Canadians have chosen to incorporate their personal information or not, into the final results. And Mr. Speaker, as always, will be open and transparent about this all.
Member for Banff Airdrie.
Well, Mr. Speaker, since the minister seems to have trouble answering questions, maybe I could make it a little easier for her by putting it in the form of a multiple choice question, like her so-called democracy survey. So who ultimately chose the questions that were to be included in the Liberal survey? She could press 1 for experts, press 2 for academics, press 3 for her political staff, or press 4 for the magical democracy fairy. So will the minister finally be honest with Canadians and simply admit this is nothing more than a Liberal distraction tactic?
Honourable Minister for Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, we are proud that tens of thousands of Canadians are engaging in a conversation about their democratic reform. We are proud to be a government that's open to hearing from Canadians before introducing legislation in this House. And we are proud that the initiative MyDemocracy.ca was developed in collaboration with Canadian political scientists, Mr. Speaker, and we look forward to hearing from many more voices before we introduce legislation in this House.
The honourable member for Richemont-Tabasca. Mr. Speaker, the minister tells us she wants to consult the public by launching a survey to find out what the age, sex, and nationality of people, what kind of voter they are, but never does she talk about the real issues. Do we want a referendum? Do we want proportional representation, first past the post, regional representation? Mr. Speaker, if it wasn't the minister who came up with this survey, who are the intellectual giants who manipulated these questions?
Mr. Speaker, MyDemocracy.ca is about empowering as many Canadians as possible to be part of this important conversation. MyDemocracy.ca is based on the values that are at the heart of our democratic system, Mr. Speaker. MyDemocracy.ca asks these questions based on the research that exists out there, based on best practices out there, and indeed, Mr. Speaker, the very committee that the member opposite participated on responded in their report that because there is no perfect system, the best way to have this conversation with citizens is through a value-based approach.
Member for Moose Jaw Lake Centre, Lanigan.
Mr. Speaker, I've been a member of Parliament for over 12 and a half years, and I cannot recall a time when a minister or a government initiative has been mocked so relentlessly as this minister in this survey. Does the minister not realize the reason that she and her government is being ridiculed is because the survey in itself is ridiculous? Now, the minister appointed a panel of so-called academic experts to help her design the survey. And I can see why, Mr. Speaker, because it gives the minister a chance to blame yet another group of individuals for her own failures. Why does the Prime Minister simply do the right thing, appoint somebody who knows what they're doing to this important file?
Honourable Minister of Democratic Institutions.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to congratulate the honourable member for 12 and a half years of service to his constituents and to Canadians, Mr. Speaker. I'm sure that he can agree that we all wake up every day hoping to make this a better place for all Canadians. We can all agree that we are all working towards creating a healthier democracy. That's what I'm committed to, Mr. Speaker. That's what we're committed to on this side of the aisle, Mr. Speaker. And we are thankful that tens of thousands of Canadians see the merit in our approach and are engaging.
A member for Vancouver, Kingsway.
Mr. Speaker, carfentanil is a devastating drug 100 times more powerful than fentanyl. It has hit Canadian streets and people are dying in British Columbia and Alberta. It is so deadly that first responders are overdosing when they merely enter a room in which it is airborne. Yet this government refuses to declare a national public health emergency or repeal C2, as experts have called for, to save lives now. Can the minister tell us, what is she waiting for? Must more Canadians die?
Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, like the member opposite, I am extremely concerned with the extraordinary circumstances surrounding the opioid crisis, which is the cause of hundreds of deaths across the country. I can assure the member opposite that my department and I and our government are working on this matter every day. I'm working with my colleagues, including the Minister for Public Safety, on this file. We are making sure that first responders have the resources that they need. This very day, I was in communication with the Minister of Health from British Columbia to discuss making sure that all resources are being made available to respond to this crisis.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagot. Mr. Speaker, after having ignored requests from his provincial counterparts for months, the Prime Minister will finally be sitting down with them to talk about health funding. Around the kitchen table. Not really what they'd asked for. But one thing is sure, the premiers will not budge on their request to see the 6% funding increases restored. I will therefore ask the Prime Minister if he intends to honour the commitment he made during the election to work with the provinces, not to impose his conditions upon them. The Honourable Minister of Health.
Pleasure to work with my counterparts across the country over the past number of months to discuss how we can make sure that Canadians have access to the health care that they need. I'm very pleased that the Prime Minister will be speaking with the premiers across the country about health care tomorrow evening, and then the Prime Minister will ask me to continue to work with the health ministers across the country to make sure we invest in health care in a way that will transform the system and ensure that Canadians have access to the care that they need.
Honourable Member for Davenport.
Mr. Speaker, there are many residents in my riding of Davenport that have been waiting upwards of 3 years to be reunited with their spouses and children. This has led to significant economic impacts, to broken families, and to an enormous amount of stress. We know that the large backlogs and unacceptable processing times is a result of the former Conservative government's cutting of immigration levels and resources. Can the Minister of Immigration please update the House on what he is doing to accelerate bringing families together here in Canada?
Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Speaker, I thank the honourable member for her question, and I'm pleased to say that yesterday we reduced the processing times for spouses and their families from 2 years to 1 year. A special thanks to the young officials whose Tiger teams led to a radical improvement in the processing guidelines for our new system, and I can tell the House that we will harness their skills to improve our performance in other areas, including thank you.
Mr. Speaker, today we learned that the Canada Border Service Agency is very concerned that violent drug cartels will expand their reach into Canada now that the visa requirement for Mexicans has been lifted. The CBSA believes that Mexican drug cartels will send their operatives over the border with ease and recruit airport and marine employees with ties to Mexican crime rings. With drug overdoses in the news every day, can the minister tell us how he plans to fix this mess made by the Liberals' political decision to lift Mexican visas?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, CBSA has worked very closely with the Immigration and Citizenship Department to ensure that we have a strong system in place to facilitate appropriate, legitimate travel between Canada and Mexico, and at the same time to ensure the safety and security of Canadians. Canadians can be absolutely assured that every reasonable step has been taken to make sure that this arrangement works successfully both ways.
Member for Parry Sound, Muskoka.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that isn't what they're saying in an internal report. The CBSA sees Mexican drug cartels picking up the baton from China on fentanyl shipments into Canada. The Liberals' ill-advised decision to lift Mexican visas on a whim is now coming home to roost, and we will have tragic consequences. How can the minister ensure Canadians that murderous Mexican drug cartels will not have easy access into Canada to supply our streets with more deadly drugs?
Honourable Minister of Public Safety.
Mr. Speaker, contrary to that kind of fear-mongering, in fact, Mr. Speaker, what that memo shows is that CBSA has done their homework. and they've worked assiduously with all their partners in Canada and in Mexico to make sure that the border arrangement works effectively and that Canadians are indeed safe.
Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, let's talk about another area where there's a lack of planning in this government's immigration policy. The funding for Liberal-sponsored Syrian refugees is about to run out. And months ago, in advance of this, I asked the minister how many of these refugees had found full-time jobs and how many they were predicting to do so. So he's already had this question in committee, and I'm going to ask it to him once again. How many Syrian refugees have found full-time employment?
How many? Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, in terms of funding, the honourable member should know that just recently, last month, we initiated $18.5 million of additional funding, half of which is going to language training and half of which is going to settlement areas. And the member should also know that this is a long-term investment. When refugees come from a terrible civil war without language or education, it takes a while for them to become fully operating Canadians.
Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Well, Mr. Speaker, that's code for I don't know and I don't care. And he should care, because in order to have the most successful experience,
Order. The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre and others will want to hear the question. They'll come to order. The Honourable Member for Calgary Nose Hill.
Mr. Speaker, this is a very simple question. It's one that ensures the success both of Syrian refugees and of Canadian taxpayers. They should be planning for this. He should be able to answer it. How many of the refugees have found full-time employment?
Answer the question. Honourable Minister of Immigration.
Mr. Speaker, we have been working with the provinces to plan this since day one, and the settlement agencies and many Canadians. As I have said, this is a long-term investment. Somewhat less than half of the refugees currently have full-time employment, but 90% of the government-assisted refugees are in language training, and many of them are making terrific progress towards gainful employment. And this will be a successful long-term investment for Canada, and the children always do extremely well.
Member for Saskatoon West. The Honourable Member for Saskatoon West.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. 4,600 financial professionals and accountants working for the public service have been fighting for pay equity for years. But tomorrow, they have to go before the Public Service Labour Relations Board to defend themselves against a government that's trying to limit their case before they've even had a chance to be heard. Mr. Speaker, this is why we need proactive pay equity legislation now. This government claims to support pay equity, so why is it using its lawyers to fight a pay equity claim against its own employees?
Honourable Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, we're proud of Canada's world-class public service. We're encouraged by recent progress in negotiations, and we remain committed to bargaining in good faith with public sector unions and negotiating deals that are fair for public servants and fair for all Canadians. We have a strong mandate to implement an ambitious agenda focused on the middle class, and we know the important role our public service will play on delivering on those commitments, and we look forward to continuing those discussions, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Mr. Speaker, we're just a few weeks away from Christmas, and for the many Canadians who live from one paycheck to the next with no security cushion, receiving the money they're entitled to would be a welcome Christmas gift, be it a tax settlement or a recalculation for the Canada Child Benefit. Families back home are having trouble making ends meet because the backlog at Revenue Canada are doubling the time it takes to process applications. Mr. Speaker, what does the minister plan to do to ensure that these people have a Merry Christmas? The Honourable Minister of Social Development.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague for this opportunity to remind the House just how important it is to invest in middle-class families and to ensure that no one is left behind. That involves the child benefit, the Canada Child Benefit. As a colleague mentioned, it's important. It will help 9 million Canadians across the country, and it will also ensure that services and benefits are provided to meet citizens' needs.
Merci.
Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Bill C-29 is bad legislation that implements bad measures in a bad Liberal budget. That's the reality. But there's worse yet, Mr. Speaker. It contains a virus, a constitutional one, because we know that the bill is attacking the Consumer Protection Act that is a provincial jurisdiction, and in 2014 the Supreme Court said that. They're still going ahead. We're heading into a constitutional squabble. We don't need that any more than we need a toothache. Why is the Liberal government so intent on interfering in areas under provincial jurisdiction? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, in our budget, we have put in place a number of steps to help improve things for the middle-class Canadians. We've also improved consumer protection. It's very important to have regulations that work across the country, and that is exactly what we've done with consumer protection in the banking sector. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint-Laurent. But there's something missing there. In 2014, Mr. Speaker, the Supreme Court was very clear. The consumer protection is provincial responsibility, but the government wants to take action. The Quebec Premier, the National Assembly, said they will challenge C-29 if adopted. The Liberal government is going ahead anyway. We're heading right into a constitutional squabble. This is going to mean millions of dollars for lawyers, and the government's going ahead with it. Why isn't the minister doing what he should? Take those clauses out of Bill C-29. The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, the banking sector is a federal jurisdiction. We know that it's very important to protect consumers in the banking sector, and that is exactly what we're doing. We are improving the situation for Canadians across the country in terms of protection in this sector.
Member for Cypress Hills Grasslands.
Mr. Speaker, neonics are a valuable tool for agriculture. Farmers have used these chemicals safely and effectively for decades, and they rely on them. Without consultation and with virtually no scientific study, the Liberals announced that these chemicals will no longer be available to producers. Now we hear that decision was not based on science, but in fact came down from the PMO. Mr. Speaker, the integrity of our ag system is critical. How can that be maintained when decisions such as this are not being based on science, but on the whims of one or two of the Prime Minister's hired help?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Mr. Speaker, our government takes matters of health and safety very seriously, and Health Canada reviews pesticides on a regular basis. As part of that scientific review, Health Canada found that a particular pesticide, imidacloprid, can be found in concentrations up to 290 times what is an acceptable risk in water. Given this risk, Health Canada is proposing a phase-out of agricultural uses for imidacloprid. There is a proposal. It is evidence-based. It is sensitive to the realities of farmers while proposing steps to protect the environment.
The member for St. John's East.
Mr. Speaker, fully 1 in 8 Canadian jobs are linked to international trade. Stronger and more strategic foreign direct investment initiatives will help ensure that Canada is recognized as the best location for international investment. We know the Minister of International Trade has been very busy opening international markets, new international markets for Canadian businesses with her efforts at CETA and the Canadian-Ukraine Free Trade Agreement. But can the Minister inform this House what she is doing to attract job-creating investments for here in Canada?
Good question. Honourable Minister of International Trade.
I'd like to thank the honourable member for his very important question. Our government believes that now is the time for partnerships and prosperity. Now is the time for Canada to be the world's location of choice for investments. Strengthening our national brand and attracting international investment are key elements of my mandate. That's why I'm delighted that Canada is dedicating $218 million to support the creation of a new investment promotion agency to increase the investment that will create jobs and growth for middle-class Canadians.
Member for Edmonton Riverbend.
Mr. Speaker, last week's Statistics Canada release was more bad news for Alberta. Last month, unemployment in Alberta rose to a staggering 9%, the highest in a quarter century. The report also highlighted that 14,000 construction jobs were lost last month. So the Liberals talk about building stuff, but the people who build stuff have lost 14,000 jobs. What am I missing here, Mr. Speaker? Can the minister please tell Alberta's struggling families when they can expect the Liberals to do something to actually create the jobs we need now?
Honourable Minister of Infrastructure and Communities.
Mr. Speaker, we all understand
the difficult time that Alberta families are going through, and that is why, in cooperation with the province, and we approved 3 pipelines that will create more than 22,000 jobs, as well as with the support of municipalities, we have approved more than 125 projects with combined investment of more than $3 billion for Alberta communities. We hope that we believe that these investments will create jobs for all Canadians, including Albertans. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nesneti, Mississippi, Churchill River.
Yesterday, I rose in the House to ask this minister a question to which she replied, and I quote, "It is not a situation I'm well aware of. In fact, I've brought this file to the attention of the minister 3 times in this House, and I've written a letter to which remains unanswered. It is a responsibility to do her job, Mr. Speaker. Out of respect for the students of Nortap Norpac who travel from Saskatchewan to be here today, will the minister answer my question? Will her government help Nortap Norpac?"
The Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
I want to thank the honourable member for Desney, Mississippi, Churchill River, for helping to arrange the meeting with the students from this program with my department and my office earlier today. The member can rest assured that I've asked my office to continue working with her, the students, but also the program's administration on a path forward with all possible partners.
Député de Pierrefonds-Dollard.
The honourable member for Pierrefonds-Dollard.
Last election and recently with the census, Canadians showed their belief in supporting good quality data from an independently trusted source. The data collected by Statistics Canada helps everybody. The private sector, governments at all levels, not-for-profit groups, and researchers to make better decisions. And it is a cornerstone of this government's commitment to evidence-based decision-making. Can the minister update the House on how he is ensuring the independence of Statistics Canada?
Good question. Well, Minister of Economic Development.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member from Pierrefonds-Dollard for that very insightful question. Yeah. And it was my honour, Mr. Speaker, on day 1, on behalf of this government, to reinstate the mandatory long-form census. That was a very important government announcement. And yesterday, I was pleased to also table legislation to amend Statistics Act to reinforce the independence of our statistical agency, Mr. Speaker, because let's make no mistake about this. Ideology will no longer trump good quality data.
Honourable member for Fort McMurray, Cold Lake.
Yay. Mr. Speaker, last week KPMG released the findings of their audit on Nunavut Planning Commission. The findings were troubling. Victor Tutu, who was the Chief Financial Officer of NPC, was also the president of 2 companies the NPC was charging hundreds of thousands of dollars to. Mr. Speaker, I know the Liberals do not understand conflict of interest, but on this side of the House, we do. How is the Liberal government going to respond to this blatant conflict of interest?
Order. Honourable Minister of Indigenous and Northern Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the member for the question, and I too am looking into this matter. It is, in terms of the Nunavut Planning Commission, there is much work being done, including new members of the Commission, and as well, we are working hard on Nunavut devolution.
The honourable member for Manicouagan. Mr. Speaker, Vice President Joe Biden is in the city and will be meeting with the Premier of Quebec. What a wonderful opportunity for the government to join in and to acknowledge that the forestry system in Quebec complies with free trade regulations. What an excellent opportunity to come forth with some action to protect the industry. Nobody wants to see any Canadian capitulation. Will the government immediately provide loan guarantees to our forestry sector and commit to ensuring free trade will apply?
Yes, the Commerce International.
The Honourable Minister. We are committed to protecting the Quebec forestry sector and system and will continue to include it in all our negotiations. We are confident that the forestry industry in Canada is operating in compliance with international rules. I was happy to speak to the Quebec Minister of Forestry a few weeks ago, and I'm keen to meet him again this afternoon, along with the Quebec Minister for the Economy and my colleague, the Minister for Natural Resources. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Mr. Speaker, In a letter dated November 29th, Jean-Marc Fournier reminded the Minister of High Finance, and I quote, "The federal parliament has no power to decide peremptorily that provincial legislation does not apply." Yet the Liberals voted. Order, please. Order. I mentioned earlier this week that ministers must be named with their proper titles. Therefore, I would ask the member to finish his question and use the proper titles. Yet the Liberals voted against our amendments to fix the problems in C-29 knowingly, because they decided to defend the banks by attacking Quebec. My question is this, Mr. Speaker: how many $1,500 tickets did it take to convince them to sell out Quebec consumer protection in the favor of the banks? The Honourable Minister of Finance. Mr. Speaker, we implemented several measures into the budget to help the middle class. We also decided that it was very important to update and modernize consumer protection in the banking sector. That is what we did. And banking comes under federal jurisdiction. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Now I believe the Honourable Opposition House Leader has the usual Thursday question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to ask the Government House Leader if she could share with the House what the business of the remainder of the week and next week would be.
The Honourable Government House Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For the rest of today, we will debate Bill S4 on tax conventions. Tomorrow, we will call Bill C25, the business framework legislation, followed by Bill C30 regarding CETA.
Monday and Tuesday, we will be studying Bill C31 on the free trade agreement between Canada and Ukraine. And in the following days, we will give priority to Bill S4 with the goal to seeing it adopted before the adjournment. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The day.
Government orders, government bills. Resuming debate on Bill S4.
Arrangement relatif à la fiscalité.